by trashing a hero in Vietnam, by trashing a man that's guided America through 9/11, a man that's dedicated his entire life to protecting Americans at home and abroad, is beneath contempt. And it shows how desperate they all are, because they know that 7 out of 10 Americans say this investigation should be seen through to the end. Bob Mueller was awarded a Bronze Star. Bob Mueller was awarded a Navy Commendation, several medals, chose to remain in Vietnam when he could have easily gone home. After this American hero, who didn't even have to be there, that Bob Mueller chose to fight for, to defend this country, shot through the thigh, continued fighting and defending this country.
They will have a hard time smearing Bob Mueller if they ever try to in the future.
And these attacks on Robert Mueller are disgusting. Robert Mueller was at the FBI picking up the pieces after 9/11. He was a loyal Republican appointed by President Bush. He's a good man. And people accusing him of bias are liars, flat-out liars. And I've been a Republican for 30 years, but I'm not going to put up with those types of scumbags in my party attacking a good man like Robert Mueller, who is a loyal American, patriotic. He was a Marine. He is the straight arrow that we need in charge of this investigation. The FBI also should not be attacked.
That we have a United States Constitution, that we have a rule of law, that we have something called probable cause, and that we have constitutional protections.
For Robert Mueller, the director of the FBI, Sibel had become an embarrassment. The reprisals intensified. Sibel was taken to a building in Chinatown for a lie detector test.
They asked me like things about security, whether or not I was approached by spies and to be recruited, which I said yes.
Sibel had gone too far for her former bosses. The FBI director handed the case over to the then Attorney General, John Ashcroft. Ashcroft's reaction was extreme.
Based on this privilege, everything that had to do with my case was considered top secret, classified, and a matter of national security, which requested the courts to put a stop in any process that dealt with my case.
Mueller and Ashcroft managed to block Sibel's lawsuits. The message was clear: keep quiet or go to jail.
He cited 2 reasons: to protect certain sensitive diplomatic relations and to protect certain foreign business relations of the United States. Now, they are saying that whole information, everything, is classified.
Mr. Mueller was the primary official responsible for the invocation of the state secrets privilege, gag orders, and retroactive classification of congressional records in my case, the Sibel Edmonds case, a large part of which pertained to criminal, terrorism, and espionage-related operations conducted by Fethullah Gulen and his network in the United States. Mueller was in charge of the FBI's investigations and pursuit of Gulen and his network for 11 years. By quashing and covering up reports and cases involving Gulen's terrorist, criminal, espionage operations through retaliations, invocations of the state secrets privilege, and hindering congressional oversight and investigations through retroactive classification.
He's got a steel backbone. Remember, Wolf, this is a decorated Marine from the Vietnam era conflict who has an entire career of noteworthy accomplishments. He's prosecuted Russian mobsters and organized criminals for his entire career, and he's done it unflinchingly and unblinkingly. So I don't worry whatsoever that he's going to be feeling any pressure to do anything other than that which he thinks is right under the law.
On the morning of May 17th, 2011, FBI and LA sheriff's officers raided his home. The pre-dawn raid came after similar FBI raids on activists in Minnesota, Michigan, and Illinois, targeting fellow members of a political group called the Anti-War Committee.
Isn't that the way that they silence struggle and change in this country all the time. The FBI served Tom and his wife with subpoenas to appear in front of the grand jury on October 19th last year. He is choosing not to participate in a process where the U.S. Attorney has handpicked the 23 jurors. There is no judge. He is not allowed to have a lawyer, and the proceedings are conducted in secrecy away from the public and the press. Tom is the spokesperson for the National Committee to Stop FBI Repression.
That defend us every day, that are working around the clock right now as you wake up in America to stop the next domestic attack from ISIS. Yes.
The FBI is responsible for more terrorism plots in the United States than any other organization. More than Al-Qaeda, more than Al-Shabaab, more than the Islamic State, more than all of them combined. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the FBI became less concerned with gangsters and crooked elected officials. The new target became terrorists, and the pursuit of terrorists has consumed the FBI. Every year, the Bureau spends $3.3 billion on domestic counterterrorism activities.
It's very un-American. It's very unpolitic to create a crime and then solve the crime and say, gee, what a wonderful job we're doing in fighting the war on terror, when actually what they've done is created the terrorists themselves. It's politically wrong and it's legally wrong.
There are new details out about the Somali-American teenager accused of plotting Friday's attempted bombing at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland, Oregon. Mohammed Osman Mahmoud now expected in court tomorrow. But why is this trend happening? I mean, if what you're saying is that this can be a trend, what is happening?
Well, again, it's the disturbed individuals. I mean, what leads somebody to kill that poor college student in New York? And there are people who are disturbed all over the world. The problem is that these people that hold the grudges that they're disturbed, they use their religion for their own personal wars.
And that the FBI is much better at creating terrorists than it is at catching terrorists. In the 14 years since 9/11, you can count about 6 real terrorist attacks in the United States. These include the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013. In those same 14 years, the Bureau, however, has bragged about how it's foiled dozens of terrorism plots. In all, the FBI has arrested more than 175 people in aggressive undercover counterterrorism stings. These operations, which are usually led by an informant, provide the means and opportunity, and sometimes even the idea, for mentally ill and economically desperate people to become what we now term terrorists.
Criminal. Rather than merely providing somebody the opportunity to commit a crime, instead they talk them into committing the crime. And it's the talking into committing the crime that is really offensive to the rule of law.
The problem is that there are the certain few that are disturbed individuals. They're highly disturbed individuals that don't feel like they belong in a certain section of society. They don't get the support they need. And so instead of turning to people like the Ahmadi Muslim community who can provide that, instead of coming to us, they reach out to others who prey on their naivety and their ignorance and their immaturity and lead them astray.
An informant can earn $100,000 or more for every terrorism case they bring to the FBI. That's right, the FBI is paying mostly criminals and con men 6 figures to spy on communities in the United States, but mostly Muslim American communities.
We learned from a report in the Washington Post that right here, that the FBI has repeatedly submitted inaccurate information to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in its efforts to obtain secret warrants in terrorism and espionage cases, severely undermined the government's credibility in the eyes of the chief judge of that court. There are growing concerns about the competence of the FBI and the independence of the Department of Justice. This pattern of abuse of authority and mismanagement causes me and many others on both sides of the aisle to wonder whether the FBI and Department of Justice have been faithful trustees of the great trust that the Congress and American people have placed in them to keep our nation safe while respecting the privacy rights and civil liberties of all Americans.
Director Mueller, I'm not impressed by your assertion that there are thousands of facts. That's your job. That's the FBI agent's job. When you came to us with the Patriot Act and wanted expanded powers, we gave them to you to fight terrorism. And your agents are supposed to be accurate on the facts. And if they're wrong on the facts, they're subjecting someone to an invasion of privacy, to a national security letter, or to a search warrant that ought not to be issued.
And I'm deeply disturbed by the Justice Department Inspector General's report finding widespread illegal and improper use of national security letters to obtain Americans' phone and financial records. Underscore that. Widespread illegal and improper use. Inspector General found 22 separate instances where the FBI improperly abused national security letters. In case you think 22 doesn't seem like a lot, that was 22 in a review of only 77 files. And not a single one of those violations has been reported by the FBI. When he appeared before Congress last week, the Inspector General testified there could be thousands of additional violations among the tens of thousands of NSLs that the FBI is now using each year.
When you start comparing Robert Mueller to Stalin or Hitler, you're not attacking Robert Mueller. You're attacking the United States of America. You're attacking the United States Constitution. You're attacking the genius of our founding fathers to make sure that for over 240 years, those sort of abuses haven't happened here. And they're still not happening here.
Despite these extensive abuses, the top leadership of the FBI sat idly by for years, doing nothing to stop this practice. And Director Mueller, what seems to be a break from many in this administration now, says that he takes responsibility for the egregious violations that occurred during the handling of the NSLs, as he should.
I do not believe that any of my observations, however, excuses the FBI's misuse of national security letters. When the Patriot Act enabled the FBI to obtain sensitive information through NSLs on a much larger scale, the FBI should have established sufficient controls and oversight to ensure the proper use of those authorities. The FBI did not do so. The FBI's failures, in my view, were serious and unacceptable. The FBI had investigated certain groups because of the exercise of the First Amendment rights. Certain groups that were People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Greenpeace, the Catholic Worker. The FBI had opened investigations of either individuals who were connected to these entities or the entities themselves. We concluded that the basis for opening these reviews, in some cases the FBI extended the investigations involving these advocacy groups to their members without adequate basis, and in some cases they retained information about the groups in its files inappropriately. Also, the FBI gave inaccurate information about the basis for some of their reviews when Congress asked about it.
You know, it seems to me the FBI is again at a crossroads. Some are calling on Congress to take away the FBI's domestic intelligence functions.
And he's no nonsense, he's direct, he's trustworthy, he's truthful. He's a very special man.
It was extraordinary that you had ethically challenged sycophants, these quislings.
Got to get behind